So my first question will be, and starting from Nick Palestra, what unique challenges and opportunities exist for companies that are interested in doing business with the government in the space sector? And we can start again with the opportunities first, and then we can move into the problems and complications.
Yeah, sure. So hi, welcome, and thanks for having me back. With the previous panel was really nice, so I think this panel will also ensure some nice discussions. And to get to your question, I need the opportunities. Maybe one is quite obvious, is that governments have a really broad variety of interest in where they can use space data and where they can use or space exploration or other space aspects to be used. And if I look here in Europe alone, or actually ESA related governments, they already have promised 7.15 billion euros for the coming few years, and the budget in the US is only bigger. So a lot of money is already allocated towards space projects, and can therefore be basically picked up by numerous of parties and companies. But if you then dwell back to the challenges, that also comes with, of course, responsibility with those large sums of money. And you're taking public money often, so you also need to be able to show responsibility on that money, and where maybe you even need to show how you spend it. And I said the governmental tenders typically have a long duration. They have long processes in which no work can be done yet, but you still need to wait whether you get the contract, yes or no. And in that time, you still need to have your team together. You need to basically invest in your team, and also be prepared to either not win the project, but also when all of a sudden the project will fall your way, which of course you hope. And you will also need to act fast. So you need to be able to have a bit of margin and be able to act fast, but also not fall over when you don't get the project awarded.
Perfect. So those are all good points. And Mikołaj, I would love to hear what you would like to add to this as well.
Yeah, well, I think that the amount of money that might soon, be put into the market by the governments might be very big, as long as we all survive this unusual situation that we have in the world right now. So I think that the quite of a challenge will be how to be able to use that money along with your commercial activities for when you are the upstream space company, because it's not like you can run like hundreds of projects in every company. Probably primes in Europe can do that, but smaller companies, which are let's say the backbone of the space here in Europe, have some limited capabilities. So it's always the question what to prioritize, and that's something that you have to think about when doing business with government, because it's not always that clear. Maybe you don't want to go into the business with government because then you will miss many business opportunities that might be there in normal space industry, which could give you more let's say occasions to develop new products. So it's always kind of a SWOT analysis of cooperation with government. So that's, let's say, that's the challenge. But on the other hand, the opportunity is to be the one that will secure the supply chain for your country, or for a different country actually. And to be in the game, in the space game, let's say, with that country for many years, because usually it's not like it's a one shot and then it's over. It's usually right now more like a corporation for years. Even if you are, working as a satellite as a service company, it still probably will not end after 1 year or two. It's gonna be like 5 or 10 years. So that can give you the stability. So it's up to the industry, up to the company to determine what do they want. It's might be hard to do both, like to be in the normal space industry and to do business with government if you are, let's say, SME. But of course, if you are, one of the prime integrators, it's like you have to do both.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a fair point, obviously, because government contracts, as you also describing, they usually are bigger contracts, require more time commitment and more effort as well. But and that could be challenging for startups, especially with all sorts of the licensing and all of the things that go into it, a longer process. So definitely, we're gonna come back to that discussion. But I would like to first ask again, Mikuláš, back to you once again, and then to Nick. So what are some of the incentives and some of the support initiatives that exist from, let's say, the Polish Space Agency and from then to Nick from the Netherlands Space Office, or from ESA again, as both countries fall under the ESA support region. So I would love to hear that. How are they supporting early stage companies and the startups locally?
So right now in Poland, and I think that's the case also for the whole Eastern Europe, we have some ESA business incubator centers that are supporting the startups. But in the end, we are kind of lacking of governmental, let's say, space programs, meaning that even though we have space agencies, like the Polish Space Agency you mentioned, they do not have large budget which is capable of financing a launch of satellite or even building a CubeSat. They are more focused on, for example, building a national SSA SST capabilities. So it's a problem with the government. I mean, with assigning the budget for the space. Obviously, everybody knows that it's needed, but somehow, it's like 10 years in ESA and it didn't happen. So many companies are cooperating closely with ESA. We had this European Space Agency, this incentive scheme that supported the industry when we joined the ESA. It was, let's say, enough to put some of the companies in a good position to get some contracts from ESA, but mostly in the optional programs, not in the mandatory ones. So right now, lots of companies have moved into the, let's say, private space industry to get the clients for their solutions, while having the ESA and some other European programs like Horizon as a, let's say, additional financing. So that's how it looks from the, let's say, kind of a emerging country perspective.
Perfect. And Nick, what would you say regarding the Netherlands situation?
In the Netherlands, we have ESTEC, the technical side of ESA here in Noordwijk. And right next to it, we have the Space Business Innovation Center, or SBIC for short, which is an incubation center for startups and some scale-ups, which they have, I think, about 10 different companies that are just sitting in one building together, learning from each other, and being supported by ESA and some of the larger companies that we already have here, like Airbus, and they are also really keen on also needs pointing startups towards their towards the various funds and that are available. There are quite a numbers of funds available through ESA, but also throughout the Dutch NSO, the Dutch Space Office, but also the newfound EUSPA. So there are numbers of funds available for these small companies, and and next to that, we also have our own branch organization here in the Netherlands called SpaceNet. And SpaceNet now has 52 companies under its belt, basically all Dutch space-related companies, and we all see each other as basically almost colleagues. Of course, there's some competition under some of them, but we really try to stand as one nation in the large competition and help each other.
Mm-hmm. Perfect, wonderful. So now that we have again the overview of what's happening in Netherlands and Poland and the support that for the startups is offered, now we kind of go back into, as we were touching upon in the previous question regarding the again the procurement, right, with the how do you get actually the selection process and what check boxes you have to fit in order to be even able to qualify for the government contracts for some of the projects out there. So I'll be happy to ask you first, what are some of those check boxes that you have to fit as a company, and then how do you better prepare for those check boxes to fit that? What would be advices for the companies that are hoping to get the government contracts?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start.
Sure.
From my perspective, at least. There might be some, formal stuff that you have to worry about, like a startup which was funded like yesterday might not be suitable to get some governmental contract. So I guess having the company which has some history and and being able to show that you are not only, in R&D phase, but also you have some income, you have some clients, you have some revenues. That would be something which, decreases the risk of you getting the money and, ending in very nice country, living for the rest of your life with governmental money. So I guess the people are watching for this. But also, I think that even though it's not on the list of the official, documents that you have to have, but I think that being kind of known in the governmental agencies and in the, groups of people who are coordinating the governmental projects, I think that's very important. So get yourself visible, and that would be also very important from my perspective. Unless, of course, the governmental projects will, be near the change of the government, then you have to do the very same exercise probably twice. But have a stable financial situation, or at least stable on paper, and then be known for people that's very important.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So again, reputation, track record. So those are the two main things that we took away from that. And Nick, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so we need to, first of all, fully agree to me what Mikolaj was saying. But also, often very important for governments is CSR, corporate social responsibility, and so governments also look at what do you do for your community, and what do you do outside of not only being the cheapest or the best in your field, but also are you, for example, hiring people with disabilities, or are you teaching students? And we notice more often that plays a role. And next to that, also make sure that whenever you go, whenever you want to go for government contracts, make sure that your organization already fits into basically the values of that government. For example, for many European projects, but also in the US, I know that's quite a big deal, is the demographic of your staff. US often has the US only, but also in the EU, it's only people with an EU passport can work on a certain project. So make sure that you're already prepared prepared your staff and in your whole organization to be able to do those contracts.
Yeah, that's a great point as well, that many younger companies might actually miss, and just because of that get left out of the possibility. So another thing is just building this and initiating this relationship with the government agencies and the governmental bodies again, and how do you effectively communicate your value proposition to the government? So that's one of the key takeaways and key questions that I have. And also, how do you identify the opportunity? So do you apply for, so how do you identify your opportunity with the governments and the grants that they offer and the contracts to qualify for that? So that's a question. And maybe Mikolas can go ahead with that first as well.
Yeah, so I think that you have to know about the opportunity before it's officially published. I mean, it's kind of the same as it is in European Space Agency. You have the best chances if you are already in touch with the proper people before there are the official documents published. That gives you the best chance to not only know something before the documents are published, but also to be the ones who is giving the knowledge on how to put the requirements. So I think that would be kind of a maybe not must have, but that makes the stuff easier. Of course, if we are talking about multi-million projects which are about building a constellation of satellites, probably it's not going to be that easy. But on the other hand, it's not like these kind of projects are written down and published within few hours. So it's gonna take a lot of time, and probably the whole process will take much longer than the normal sales to a different company in the industry. So the companies that are doing the governmental projects have to also take into account the fact that it probably will take much longer than anticipated, and they have to have money to to survive that period when nothing will happen, basically.
And Nick, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we need basically need is a bit similar as to what Mikolas was saying, but it's really try to take the government or certain representatives of the government in your story. So not only try to win contracts, but also invite certain representatives to social events you might host, or and really build a long-term relationship around that, being known to them, and also that they know why, for example, you founded the company or why you get to work for that company, that they know that you're true in your objectives and in your way of work, and not only are there to win money. Yeah, that it actually needs to really try to be there and show yourself.
Yeah, so as we're seeing it again, it's a full-time job on its own to just simply even build that relationship initially and initiate those and communicate again effectively the vision of the company and the value proposition that you have. So that's understood. The next question I have, now that we see some changes again happening with the way the governments are allocating the contracts, as the pivoting, let's say, well, at least in the case of the United States governmental bodies, when they're allocating the contracts, usually was a cost plus, model that they were allocating for the contracts. Now they changing that, so they setting more of preset timelines, and they trying to push it more towards again faster missions, and they just given this full preset amounts when they allocating the contract. So how do you think that will be changing the way the projects will be executed and the relationships between the government and the private companies?
What we see here is that typically space companies used to work according to a waterfall method, like really getting the big chunk of requirements at the very beginning of your project, and then not seeing the customer or the government in this case throughout the entire duration of the government of the project, and then only see it in the end when you're finished. You see your customer again and say, here's your project, and basically at that time often either the project is no longer wanted or not wanted in that sense when you started it. And we really see now a transition towards more of an agile or safe method of working, in which you have sprints of 2 weeks or a month, and then you demo again what you did so far, and also projects around with a minimal viable product, and which is just expanded on over time. So you have which creates lower time to markets, and also more when, for example, governments change, which they sometimes do, which you also have the agility to maybe change a project or steer it into a different direction, instead of having thrown away millions of dollars or euros down the drain for a project that's no longer needed.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's the one thing that the governments and the agencies are trying to work faster, because they right now tend to kind of divide the projects into something which is larger and is still following the waterfall, because in these kind of missions for hundreds of millions of euro, it's hard to follow different methodology. But on the other hand, you have smaller projects where you as Nick said, you need a MVP, and it's happening. Actually, it's of course it requires the government to take a bigger risk, but in the end they have the solution faster. And I think that currently in modern world, like the world that started from 1 year ago, the governments need to have a solution rather than the solution. So I mean, having something is better than having something which is perfect, but in the future, which might not come, at least in the dual use project. So so things are changing. In Europe, we of course see that happening quite slower in the US, because I think that the SpaceX started that trend in the US with NASA money, which basically outsourced the risk to SpaceX. I'm really looking forward to see how the emerging countries will right now handle that topic, because doing stuff faster and with higher risk means that you have to have a experienced people at the governmental side. And when you are emerging country like we are in Eastern Europe or Africa or Asia, you don't have experienced people in governmental agencies, because they are working in industry, because the industry is giving you better, environment for work. So so that's gonna be interesting, and probably some of the projects will end in a bad way, but still there will be more and more projects run, and more companies will get to the market, get their products tested, and actually get the cooperation with government. So I think in the end the results will be fine for the industry, like the overall industry.
Perfect. All right. So that's clear. Now that's clear to me. And the next thing is we were also discussing, right? So regarding the younger companies and the expertise and experienced people, as you're mentioning, Nikolaj, in the government agencies. So how can companies leverage their expertise basically and balance the need for innovation and agility with the more rigid requirements and processes of government contracts, and what strategies can they employ to minimize risk and maximize the success? So when, you know, the innovation again with this now preset budgets for the contracts where you don't really have this opportunity to, you know, add new stages to your project, and you really have to just make do with what you have, right? So how can companies minimize those risks and maximize the results?
But here in Netherlands, we really try to switch it around. So throughout the branch organization I was talking about earlier, the SpaceNet, we basically try to show what expertise we have here in the Netherlands to the company or to the Dutch government, and with that try to steer the agenda for space. So, for example, last year we for the first time through the efforts of SpaceNet, we achieved that the Dutch government issued a space agenda. So, what are the focuses for the coming few years for the Dutch government on space? And also through that, we, of course, in November, we had the ESA ministerial, in which all ESA ministers come together and determine their budgets. And with that, through SpaceNet, our Dutch minister was aware of our expertises and was able to steer some of the focus and some more of the budget towards the expertises that we are good in here in the Netherlands. For example, the optical payloads like laser communication and our cybersecurity, which we are typically good at. And to the other question of how can companies balance the need for innovation and agility with those rigid requirements, is basically is never bet on a single horse. So, like we of course said, governments have these long tenders in which you don't have any work. Try in those periods, always try to focus on more of the commercial, smaller contracts, such that you still have the cash flow going on, but also more of the availability to innovate and really try to use those commercial contracts for your innovation. Also try to see if you can build side projects around your main project. So, for example, we have a company here in the Netherlands called Dawn Aerospace, which their main purpose is in the end to supply a space plane, which is able to deliver small sats to low Earth orbit. And however, of course, that takes a long time to innovate, to develop, and a long time in which no money can be earned on that space plane. But around that, with that same technology, they created satellite propulsion, which is now on board of numbers of satellites in orbit, in which now that cash flow can be used to create a space plane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great example, and that to me resonates also with the, let's say, SpaceX as they planning to develop again the Starship and the Mars transportation vehicles, and at the same time they doing the orbital launches, and again now the Starlink project is also part of that as well. So definitely resonates. And one important point that Nick mentioned, so you cannot really as a company, especially as a startup, afford to have one stream of income, right? So you cannot really bet that you're going to get the government contract and then at the end you might lose the tender completely, and now you wasted all your time, you don't have the commercial clients, and you're basically out of business, right? And Mikolas wanted to add to that as well. So
yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Nick about all that you said. I think that it's really important to to have something else in mind, some kind of a maybe not different business model, but a different branch where you can put your effort in whenever you have time, or split your efforts. Obviously, when you are doing propulsion for satellites, it might be hard to transfer the technology for some terrestrial applications. But in many different cases, like in downstream companies, or different, let's say, subsystem manufacturers, it might be very interesting to really not only look at space domain, but also try to, you know, to put that technology to use in normal, let's say, day-to-day application. It's not easy, but at least quite recently, European Space Agency started some projects that give you financial support to transfer the technology. And actually, in the end, lots of technologies are being transferred to normal industry, but of course, maybe not by small companies, but rather by big prime, you know, solution providers from all across the world. So that's really important point.
And another question that I have to that, so as we talked a bit about the track record of the company and the reputation and just the capabilities, obviously, how can smaller companies and startups hope to compete with those Goliath corporations that already been there for many years and have been providing services for the governments and both the commercial clients? So how can startups position themselves to even have a chance at, you know, beating those companies for the tenders and the government contracts?
Sometimes you can't. I mean, if that's sometimes you just can't. And,
that's the truth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's true. And obviously you want to deliver better, you know, platform satellite bus than Airbus or Thales can for a big satellite when you are a startup. That's obvious. But I think that it's very connected to the topic that we have discussed at the beginning of the panel. I mean, the being in touch with the government earlier, and showing them your capabilities and trying, you know, trying to push them to put you on a list, even if you have big company from different country coming, you might deliver at least something, which will be a start, and in different additional project when there is a, let's say, more coordinated push to have more national companies working on the project, you might be one of the leaders. But I mean, with governmental projects, it's sometimes like that you know, different company which is more experienced, and it will come from the United States or from Germany or from United Kingdom, and they will just do the work. Even if their work is paid much higher than yours, they will have the quality, they will have the experience, so it will happen.
Mm-hmm. And Nick, what would you say?
In the end, and especially here in Europe, the space industry is still relatively small, and so basically I would like to say is, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Other companies have gone the road you have gone before. You have gone there, so don't try to see other companies as only purely as competition, but also try to work together and maybe set up partnerships. And but of course, don't lose your own strengths, but really try to work together. As together, you're always stronger than alone. And next that, of course, be smart in picking your battles, especially here in the Netherlands. Governmental tenders are often explicitly mentioned that that they will only be awarded to startups or scale-ups or to multinationals. So try to, especially when you're just starting, don't go straight for the Galileo contracts, but just go for a simple €20,000 startup contract, and then slowly, when you have successfully done that contract, pick one for 50 or 100,000 euros, and then from there on, in the end, you will go to the 1 million or multi-million contracts. But just allow yourself to grow, pick your battles, and then the money and the competition will come your way if you are indeed right with your solutions.
That's a great point. And what you also mentioned, the cooperation, right? So would that be increasing the chances of the companies getting contracts if they can again demonstrate and showcase that they can collectively work on the same project again, and maybe one company handles one part which they have experience at, and another company handles another part. So would that be as a plus for them when applying for the tenders in that case?
Yeah, definitely. So like we as CGI, for example, have created a center of excellence around GNSS, so navigation, together with 3 other parties. And through the strength of that combination of 4 parties, which all have their own expertises, we have been really able to show the government what we can do on navigation, and also what the especially what the vulnerabilities for current navigation solutions are. And with that, we really have persuaded the government to invest more in GNSS solutions, and with the countermeasures for those vulnerabilities.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. So thank you again for the answer, Nick. And as we're now also approaching the end of the panel here, I would like to ask both of you. So what would be, let's say, if you could summarize in 1 or 2 sentences, like what would be the advice to the younger companies that are now trying to explore the government contracts? Obviously, we touched upon some of the points already, but if you had to summarize like in 1, 2 sentences, what would be the advices for them? And Mikolas, maybe you can go first.
Yeah, so I think that my advice would be just to be humble and not lie about the things that you can't do, because you might win one contract with this kind of approach, but the reality will get you eventually. So we will lose your reputation in the government. So sometimes it's easier. Yeah, that would be very catastrophic. So it's sometimes better to say no, we can't do that, but we can do something else, than go blindly into the contract, which will get you, into the wall.
Perfect. That's a great point. And Nick, from your side?
And indeed, I agree with Mikolas there, but also need retouching on the points that have been said. Know that you're not alone there. Others have followed the same path. So try to look for cooperation. Don't reinvent the wheel, and spread your bets and pick your battles. And need be humble and allow yourself to learn and to grow within the great industry we have.
Perfect, powerful. I love it. Yeah. So this panel should definitely be as a 101 for all the like a guide for all the companies trying to explore the government contracts here. So definitely the ones that maybe have not attended live, but they got the recordings, they're lucky ones. But the ones that did not, they're missing out big time. So